Trash. You think walking off your shift to save somebody out on the street makes you a hero. Dr. Richard Hartwell, the director of nursing at St. Vincent Hospital, in his expensive gray suit and a gleaming Rolex, tore Sophia Carter's complaint file to pieces and flung it straight into her face. White scraps fluttered down to the floor like snow falling in hell. This is a hospital, not a charity for people like you. Sophia Carter, 27 years old, stood there in her nurse's uniform, still smeared with the dried blood of a stranger. She couldn't force out a single word. Margaret Cole, the head of nursing, stood beside Hartwell, arms crossed, laughing at her. Go back to the trailer park where you belong. The two of them looked at Sophia the way you'd look at a filthy insect. Hartwell threw another stack of files onto the desk. You're fired, effective immediately. You've got 30 minutes to pack your things and get out of my hospital. Sophia lowered her eyes to her hands. There was still blood under her fingernails. The blood of the girl she saved this morning. She lifted her gaze, trying to keep her voice from shaking. I saved a life. Hartwell snorted. You abandoned your shift. You broke policy. Who do you think you are? Sophia stood there, shattered, humiliated. $85,000 in student debt, $340 in her account. Rent due in 5 days. No job, no references, nothing left. The promise she made to her mother before she died, the dream of becoming a nurse, all of it splintered in this room. But 72 hours later, a convoy of black Maybachs stopped in front of her miserable apartment. 5 of them, lined up like a funeral procession. 10 men in black suits stepped out and formed a line, and the last man descended from the middle car. Dominic Rossi, the boss of New York's underground empire, the man the whole city feared. He stared straight at Sophia's window as if he knew exactly where she was standing. The girl Sophia had saved on the Manhattan sidewalk that morning was Isabella Rossi, the only sister of the Mafia boss. And Dominic Rossi had come to demand justice for the one who saved his sister, in his own way, 72 hours earlier. If this story touched your heart, please press like to support the channel. Share this video with those who need to hear this story. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the stories that come next. Thursday, 6:47 in the morning. The alarm shrieked inside a cramped studio apartment in Brooklyn. Sophia Carter, 27 years old, opened her eyes and stared up at a ceiling where the paint was peeling off in patches. She sat up, her feet touching the ice-cold wooden floor. The place was so small she could stand in the middle of the room and reach both the kitchenette and the bed with her hands. The refrigerator was nearly empty, holding only half a carton of milk nearing its expiration and a few eggs. Sophia opened her wallet, then checked the balance in her bank account on her phone. $340. She had to make it last until the end of the month. She reached for the nurse's uniform hanging behind the door, the collar worn thin, the stitching at the sleeve starting to come loose. There was no money for anything new. Elena Martinez, her roommate, was sitting at the tiny dining table, one hand wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked up at Sophia with worry in her eyes. Hey, today's your 6-month probation review. Don't be late. Hartwell's been looking for an excuse to fire you for a long time. Sophia nodded, took the dry slice of bread on the table, and swallowed it quickly without bothering with butter. I know. She slung her backpack over her shoulder, stepped out the door, and drew a deep breath before facing the November cold. 7:18 in the morning. The streets of Manhattan were packed tight with people. The wind cut into flesh. Sophia walked fast toward the subway station, weaving through the rushing crowd. Everyone had their head down. Everyone was in a hurry. No one looked at anyone. She checked her watch. 42 minutes until her shift. If she caught the 7:25 train, she'd make it on time. 7:23. Sophia passed an alley beside an upscale French restaurant. Polished glass doors, red velvet curtains, a menu with no prices, because the people who ate there didn't need to ask. She saw a small crowd gathered at the mouth of the alley. Pedestrians stopped for a few seconds, looked, then kept walking. Some raised their phones to record video. Sophia was about to pass by. Not her business. 37 minutes left. But her feet stalled. A young woman lay motionless on the cold ground. Blood streamed from a wound on her head, spreading red across the gray concrete. A Hermes handbag lay beside her, slashed wide open. A shattered iPhone sat a few steps away. A snatch and grab. The victim had been struck in the head. No one was helping. Sophia looked at her watch. 7:24. 36 minutes left. She glanced toward the subway station. Then she looked down at the girl, skin pale as wax, lips gone bluish purple. Her chest barely moved. She's dying. Sophia dropped her backpack to the ground and knelt beside the victim. Her hands began to move on instinct, the way a nurse's hands do. A weak pulse, uneven pupils, signs of a traumatic brain injury, sliding into shock. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Her voice stayed calm, professional. "This is Sophia Carter, a nurse. I have a female victim, approximately 24 to 25 years old. Severe head trauma with external bleeding. Uneven pupils. Pulse is weak and rapid. Signs of shock. Location is the corner of 5th Avenue and 52nd Street, beside the restaurant Le Bernardin." She took off her coat, the only thing keeping her warm in the biting cold, rolled it up, and placed it under the victim's head. She used a towel from her backpack to press against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. The girl, still unconscious, opened her eyes for a few seconds. Brown eyes, panicked, terrified. She looked at Sophia, her lips moving. "Don't call my family." Then her eyes closed again, and she slipped fully back into darkness. Sophia kept pressing the wound. Her hands were smeared with blood. She noticed the ring on the victim's finger. Solid gold, finely engraved. A lion wearing a crown. A family crest ring. This girl wasn't ordinary. 7:38. The wail of an ambulance siren rose from the distance. 9 minutes. She had kept this girl alive for 9 minutes. The ambulance pulled up. 2 paramedics jumped out with a stretcher. Charge Nurse Rodriguez, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, knelt beside Sophia and examined the victim. He looked at Sophia, then at her blood-covered hands, then at the steady, practiced way she was holding pressure on the wound. "You're a nurse." Sophia nodded. He let out a breath and patted her shoulder. "You saved her life. 10 more minutes and it would have been over. Her brain wouldn't have held on." They lifted the girl onto the stretcher and rushed her into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut. The siren screamed. Red lights flashed. The vehicle surged forward and vanished into the stream of Manhattan traffic. 7:52 in the morning. Sophia stood alone on the sidewalk, dried blood on her hands. No coat, cold down to the bone. She looked at her phone. 15 missed calls, all from St. Vincent Hospital. A text from Elena. "Sophia, where are you?" Hartwell's asking. A second text. "Sophia, answer. They're calling your name." A third text. "Sophia, you're done. Your shift started 20 minutes ago." Sophia stared at her blood-stained hands. A stranger's blood. The blood of the person she'd kept alive. She didn't regret it, but she knew that when she walked into the hospital today, her life would never be the same again. Sophia ran to St. Vincent's Hospital, with her hands still marked by dried blood. 45 minutes late. The moment she stepped through the lobby doors, a figure blocked her path. Margaret Cole, the head of nursing, stood there with a face as cold as ice, lips pressed into a thin, hard line. "Come with me, Miss Carter." No explanation, no chance to justify herself. Margaret Cole turned and walked away, her high heels clicking sharply on the gleaming tile. Sophia followed, her heart pounding inside her chest. She knew exactly where she was being taken. Dr. Richard Hartwell's office. What happened in that room, Sophia would never forget. The way Hartwell laughed as he tore her file apart. The way he threw the scraps into her face like he was tossing out trash. The way Margaret Cole stood beside him, arms folded, staring at her the way you stare at a filthy insect. The insults, the mocking laughter. But Sophia refused to cry in front of them. She stood there, back straight, eyes forward, swallowing every tear before it could fall. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching her break. When she walked out of the office, Sophia looked down at her hands. There was still dried blood under her fingernails. The blood of the girl she'd saved this morning. A security guard came over to her without meeting her eyes and handed her a small cardboard box filled with her personal things. "Your employee badge." They took it back. Sophia held the box to her chest and walked down the hospital hallway. Co-workers she'd once worked beside turned their faces away. No one looked at her. No one said a word. She had become invisible. On the way home, memories rushed in like a flood. 8 years ago. Sophia was 19, sitting beside a hospital bed, gripping her mother's thin hand. Catherine Carter lay there, skin yellowed like wax, cheekbones jutting, her body so wasted it hurt to look at her. Terminal cancer. Found too late because she had refused to see a doctor for 2 years. Afraid of medical bills. Afraid of becoming a burden to her daughter. "I'm sorry, my girl." Her mother's voice was faint as breath. "I didn't want to be a burden." Sophia cried, squeezing her mother's hand tighter. "I promise you, Mom. I'll become a nurse. No one should die because they don't have money. Like you. No one should be afraid to walk into a hospital because of a bill." Catherine Carter smiled, the last smile she ever gave her daughter. Then she closed her eyes, and she never opened them again. Sophia made it back to the miserable apartment in Brooklyn. Elena wasn't home yet. She set the cardboard box on the floor and looked around the tiny room, then her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, back against the wall, eyes fixed on the peeling ceiling. She started to calculate. $340 in her account, $85,000 in student debt, rent due in 5 days, electricity, water, food, no job, no recommendation letter. No one would hire a nurse who'd been fired for walking off a shift. Her phone vibrated. Grandma Martha, 82 years old, living in a nursing home in Florida. Sophia drew a deep breath, forcing her voice to sound normal before she answered. "Grandma, how are you doing?" Her grandmother's voice came bright through the line. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How's work going?" Sophia swallowed, trying to push down the lump rising in her throat. "Yes, work is still good, Grandma. Everything's fine." Her grandmother laughed, the warm laugh of an old woman. "I'm so proud of you, Sophia. My granddaughter is a nurse. Your mother is smiling in heaven." Sophia bit her lip until she tasted blood. "Yes, I think so too, Grandma." She ended the call, stared down at the phone in her hand. Then she stood up, walked into the bathroom, and closed the door. She turned the water on full blast. Then she sank to the freezing bathroom floor. And at last, she cried. A strangled, shaking sound. The cry of someone who had tried for too long, too hard, and in the end, had lost everything. Her tears blended with the roar of running water so no one would hear. So Elena wouldn't worry. So the world wouldn't know she had fallen apart. Her promise to her mother echoed in her mind. "I'll become a nurse. No one should die because they don't have money." She had kept that promise. She had become a nurse. She had saved a life this morning, and she had lost everything because of it. One day, after losing everything, Sophia stood behind the counter of a small coffee shop near her apartment in Brooklyn, an espresso pitcher in her hand. She needed money, any job. Rent was due in 4 days. The coffee shop owner was Elena's friend and agreed to let her work the evening shift for minimum wage. Better than nothing. Sophia tried to focus on the work. Make coffee, wipe tables, smile at customers, but her hands still trembled as she poured milk into the cup. The image of Hartwell tearing up her file kept flashing in her mind. Margaret Cole's mocking laughter echoed in her ears. "Trash. Go back to the trailer park where you belong." A customer sitting in the corner stared at his phone. Then he looked up at Sophia, then back at the phone, then at her again. He stood, walked to the counter. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Carter?" Sophia froze. Her heart skipped. How did he know her name? What had she done wrong? The man held up his phone and showed her the screen. "This is you, right?" On the screen was a TikTok video. 5 million views. A caption ran along the bottom. "Nurse fired for stopping to save someone on the streets of Manhattan." The video had been filmed from the window of that upscale French restaurant. The angle was high, looking down into the alley. In the video, Sophia was kneeling on the sidewalk, her hands smeared with blood, bandaging an unconscious girl. Her white nurse's uniform was stained red. Her face was focused, professional, not a trace of panic. Pedestrians walked past. No one stopped. Only her. Sophia stared at the number under the video. 5 million views. 200,000 comments. She scrolled down and read, "She's a real hero. St. Vincent should be ashamed. Does anyone know who this girl is? We need to help her. The healthcare system failed her. She got fired for saving someone? That's insane." The hashtag Justice for Sophia was trending. Thousands of people were sharing her story. Millions were talking about her. Sophia didn't know how to respond. She handed the phone back to the customer, her hands shaking. "Thank you for telling me." The man studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his wallet and placed a bill on the counter. His coffee was $8. The bill he left was $100. "You did the right thing, kid," he said, his voice low and warm. "Don't ever regret it." Then he walked out of the shop without looking back. Sophia held the bill in her hand. $100, more than an 8-hour shift. But it wasn't the money that made her throat tighten. It was that sentence. "You did the right thing." For the first time since yesterday morning, someone had said she was right. Sophia stepped into the storage room and back and closed the door. She leaned against the wall and slid down between boxes of coffee and sugar. And she cried. But this time it was different. Not the painful, hopeless tears of last night. These were warm tears, the tears of someone being comforted after so much damage. 11 at night. Sophia returned to the apartment. Elena was sitting on the bed with her laptop open, eyes shining. "Sophia, have you seen this yet? 5 million people know what happened to you now." Elena turned the laptop screen toward Sophia. That video. Justice for Sofia. Local news had covered it. Some national papers were starting to reach out. Sofia sat beside Elena and stared at the screen, overwhelmed. Who filmed this? Someone in that French restaurant, Elena said. They're trying to find a way to contact you. A reporter wants an interview. Lawyers are offering to help for free. Sofia didn't know what she was supposed to feel. Relief? Fear? Hope? She only wanted quiet. She only wanted to forget everything. But the world wouldn't let her forget. 11:47 at night. Sofia's phone buzzed. An unknown number. She looked at the screen and hesitated. Elena glanced at her and raised an eyebrow. Could be a reporter. Sofia drew a deep breath and answered. Hello? A man's voice, deep and cold, came through the line. Miss Carter, this is Vincent Caruso. A man's voice, low and cold and professional, came through the line. Sofia gripped the phone tighter, her heart beating wild inside her chest. I'm calling on behalf of the person you saved yesterday. Sofia stopped breathing for a beat. The girl on the sidewalk, blood spilling from her head. The crest ring with a lion wearing a crown. Is she all right? Sofia asked, her voice trembling. She's alive. Because of you. Silence stretched for a few seconds. Sofia could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The person you saved is Isabella Rossi. Sofia blinked. The name meant nothing to her. Rossi. She didn't know any family named Rossi. I don't know. She is Dominic Rossi's sister. Silence. This time it was longer. Heavier. Sofia felt the air in the room thicken. Elena was staring at her, eyes wide, lips moving without sound. Vincent Caruso's voice continued, still cold, still professional. She woke up. She saw the video online. She knows what happened to you after you saved her. Silence. She wants to see you. Right now. Sofia looked at the clock on the wall. 11:48 at night. Now? It's almost midnight. A car will pick you up in 15 minutes. Don't refuse, Miss Carter. The call ended. No goodbye. No further explanation. Only the flat, steady tone in the silence. Sofia lowered the phone and looked at Elena. Elena's face had gone white as paper. Rossi? Sofia. Do you know who Rossi is? Sofia shook her head, her throat dry. No. Elena sprang to her feet and grabbed Sofia's shoulders with both hands. The biggest mafia family in New York. Dominic Rossi is the boss. People call him the Ghost because no one has ever gone up against him and lived to tell the story. He controls half this city. The police don't dare touch him. The FBI has been watching him for 10 years and hasn't found proof. Sofia sank onto the bed, her mind spinning. The girl she saved yesterday. The Hermes bag. The solid gold ring. The way she said don't call my family before she blacked out. It all started to make sense. I didn't save her because I wanted to be repaid, Sofia said, her voice getting smaller. I didn't know who she was. Elena sat down beside her and took her hand. I know. But maybe this is your only chance. Sofia looked at Elena. A chance? You lost your job. You don't have money. You don't have anyone to help you, Elena said, her voice serious. And now the most powerful family in New York owes you a life. Sofia looked out the window, thinking. She didn't want anything to do with the Mafia. She only wanted to be a nurse. Only wanted to save people. Only wanted to live an ordinary life. But her ordinary life had been stolen from her hands yesterday morning. She had nothing left to lose. Headlights suddenly washed across the window. Sofia and Elena both looked down to the street. A glossy black Maybach was parked right in front of the building. Sofia had never seen a car that expensive in this part of Brooklyn. 2 men stepped out, black suits, tall bodies, standing beside the car, eyes lifted toward her apartment window. Exactly 15 minutes. They were on time. Elena squeezed Sofia's hand. You're not really going, are you? Sofia stood, reached for the thin coat hanging behind the door. The only coat she had left after using the other one to cushion Isabella's head. I'll call you every hour, she said, calmer than she expected. If I don't call, you call the police. Elena nodded, eyes full of worry. Sofia stepped out the door and didn't look back. Sofia stepped into the black Maybach, and the door closed behind her with a soft sound, gentle as a whisper. She had never sat in a car like this before. The leather seats were so supple they seemed to hold her body like an embrace. The air inside carried a faint scent of leather and sandalwood. The car moved as smoothly as if it were gliding on clouds. Not a sound, not a jolt. Even though New York streets were riddled with potholes and manhole covers, 2 men in black suits sat up front, saying nothing, never turning to look at her. As if she didn't exist. or as if they'd been ordered not to look at her. Sophia sat still, fingers clenched around the edge of her thin coat, staring out through the window. The car rolled through Brooklyn, crossed the bridge, and entered Manhattan. Skyscrapers glittered with lights in the night. Luxury storefronts with brand names Sophia had only ever seen in magazines. Then the car turned into the Upper East Side, the richest neighborhood in the city, where the price of one apartment could support her entire family for 10 generations. The car stopped in front of a high-rise building. A glass facade reflected the city's lights. The lobby was paved in white marble, polished so brightly Sophia could see her own reflection in it. A doorman in uniform opened the door for her and bowed as if she were an honored guest. Sophia followed the two men in black suits inside, stepped into a private elevator that required a special card to unlock. The elevator carried them to the very top floor, the penthouse. The doors opened, and Sophia stepped into a world that was entirely different. Her studio apartment in Brooklyn could fit inside this living room with space left over. The ceiling soared, and a crystal chandelier shimmered like 1,000 stars. The wooden floor gleamed, reflecting everything like a mirror. Paintings hung on the walls, and Sophia recognized a real Monet, not a replica, the real one. She had seen it in a book back in college, worth tens of millions of dollars, hanging in the living room like an ordinary decoration. A wall of glass opened onto a balcony, a panoramic view of Manhattan spread out below. Millions of lights blinked like a golden carpet. This was the world of people like Isabella Rossi, and it was light years away from Sophia's world. A man approached her, Vincent Caruso, the one who had called her. Around 40 years old, a face cold as stone, a long scar running from his temple down to his cheekbone. His eyes held no emotion, like the eyes of someone who had seen too much in life. "Miss Rossi is waiting for you," he said, then turned and walked away. Sophia followed, her heart beating out of control. They went down a long hallway and stopped before an oak door. Vincent knocked twice, lightly, then opened it. This was the largest bedroom Sophia had ever seen. High-end medical equipment stood beside the bed, a heart monitor screen blinking in a steady rhythm. And on the king-size bed, covered in pristine white sheets, Isabella Rossi lay waiting. 24 years old, long black hair spread across the pillow. Her head was bandaged, but her brown eyes were bright and warm. When she saw Sophia, she smiled. "There you are, the woman who saved my life." Sophia stood in the doorway, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say. She was only a poor nurse, standing in a room more expensive than her entire life put together. Isabella lifted a hand. "Come here. Sit down. I don't bite." Sophia walked over and sat in the chair beside the bed. Isabella studied her for a long moment, eyes searching for something. "I watched the video," Isabella said softly. "You got fired because you saved me." Sophia swallowed. "I didn't know who you were when I stopped." Isabella nodded. "I know. That's why I wanted to meet you." Silence. The steady beeping of the heart monitor filled the room. "You know," Isabella continued, her voice lowering, "when I was lying on the sidewalk, I was still awake for the first few minutes. I saw hundreds of feet walk past. High heels, polished dress shoes, sneakers, hundreds of feet. No one stopped. No one looked down. No one cared." Sophia listened without speaking. "Then I saw you," Isabella said, her eyes locked on Sophia's. "You knelt down. You held my hand. You told me everything would be all right. And I believed you. Why? Why did you stop when no one else did?" Sophia thought about that question for a second. Then she answered, her voice calm. "Because you were dying, and I'm a nurse." Isabella looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, warm and sincere. "You're different, Sophia Carter. You're different from everyone I've ever met." Silence. Then Isabella spoke again. Her voice changed. "My brother wants to meet you." Sophia went still. "Dominic Rossi?" Isabella nodded. "Are you afraid of him?" Sophia didn't answer. She didn't know how to answer. Isabella gave a soft laugh, clear as wind chimes. "Everyone's afraid of him. All of New York is afraid of him. But you should know one thing about my brother. He never leaves a debt unpaid, and now he owes you a life. My life, I don't want." Sophia began, but she didn't get to finish. The door behind her opened. Heavy footsteps sounded on the wooden floor. Isabella looked toward the door and smiled. "Too late. He's here." Sophia turned, and for the first time in her life, she saw Dominic Rossi. Dominic Rossi stepped into the room, and the space seemed to lose its air. 6'2", broad-shouldered, built like he'd been carved from stone. A perfectly tailored black three-piece suit hugged his frame, every seam speaking of money that didn't need to show off. Black hair swept back, a few silver strands at his temples, enough to tell you he'd lived through more than most. His features were sharp as a blade, a square jaw, a straight nose, thin lips, always closed, as if he never needed to say much. But his eyes, storm gray eyes, cold as steel, deep as an abyss, were what made Sophia stop breathing. The eyes of a man who had seen too much darkness and was no longer afraid of anything. Black ink rose from beneath the cuff of his shirt, a tattoo climbing up his wrist to wherever no one could see. When he walked in, the whole room seemed to shrink. The air turned heavy. Sophia understood why all of New York feared this man. Dominic looked at Isabella first, and for a brief moment, those steel eyes softened. "Are you in pain?" His voice was low, like distant thunder. Isabella gave a weak smile. "I'm fine, Dom. Because of her." Dominic turned to Sophia. The storm-gray gaze swept from her head to her feet, assessing, analyzing, as if he were reading every page of her life. Silence stretched 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Sophia felt stripped bare under that stare. But she didn't lower her head. She didn't look away. She met the eyes of the most powerful mafia boss in New York as if she had nothing to fear, because she had nothing left to lose. Dominic tilted his head slightly, and Sophia saw something shift in his gaze. Curiosity, surprise, or something else she couldn't name. "You are Sophia Carter," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes," Sophia answered, steadier than she expected. "You were fired because you saved my sister." "I didn't save her because I knew who she was," Sophia said, her voice not shaking. "I saved her because she was dying." Silence. Dominic watched her for a few more seconds. "Do you know who I am? Now I do. And you're not afraid. If I were afraid of dying, I wouldn't have stopped to save your sister yesterday." A moment passed. Then Sophia saw something she hadn't expected. The corner of Dominic Rossi's mouth lifted, just slightly. Not a smile, only the faintest curve, almost impossible to notice. But it was there. "We will speak in private," Dominic said, not looking at Isabella. Vincent appeared in the doorway like a shadow, helped Isabella sit up, and led her out. The door closed. Only Sophia and Dominic remained in the vast room. He walked to the window and looked out over Manhattan, glittering with lights below. His back was to her, yet Sophia still felt as if every movement she made was being watched. "Who fired you? Does that matter?" Sophia asked. Dominic turned back, storm-gray eyes cutting straight through her. "To me, it does." Silence. "I'll find out even if you don't tell me," Dominic went on, his voice even. "But I want to hear it from you." Sophia hesitated for a second. Then she told him. "Dr. Richard Hartwell, director of nursing. Margaret Cole, head of nursing. The way they tore up her file, the way they threw the paper into her face, the insults. Trash, trailer trash. Go back where you belong." Dominic listened, his face unreadable. But Sophia noticed his fingers tapping lightly against the arm of the chair. A steady rhythm. Control. Like a tiger holding back its anger. "They called you trailer trash?" Sophia nodded. Dominic was silent for a long time. Then he asked, his voice cold as ice. "Do you want them to pay?" "I want justice," Sophia said. "Not revenge." Dominic looked at her, and for the first time, he smiled. A cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "In my world, those are the same." "I don't need your help," Sophia said, her voice hard. "I don't want to owe anyone." Dominic stepped closer and stopped right in front of her. Close, too close. Sophia caught the scent of sandalwood, a trace of tobacco, and something else. Something dangerous she couldn't name. He was a full head taller than she was, but she didn't step back. "You don't owe me anything, Miss Carter." Dominic's voice dropped lower. "I owe you. The Rossi family always pays its debts, and this isn't an offer. It's a promise. In 72 hours, you'll have everything back, and they'll lose everything." Sophia didn't know what to say. She stood there, looking up at the most powerful man in New York, and no words came. Dominic walked toward the door, then paused. "The car will take you home. Prepare yourself for Monday." The door closed. Sophia stood alone in a $1 million room, her heart pounding, not knowing what she had just stepped into. Monday, 9 in the morning, 72 hours since Sophia was fired. She stood by the window of her miserable apartment in Brooklyn, staring down at the familiar street below. Her heart hammered inside her chest. Right on time. They were right on time. 5 glossy black Maybachs rolled onto the block and lined up along the curb like a funeral procession. Their engines purred like whispers. The windows were pitch black, impossible to see through. Neighbors began spilling out of their apartments, curious and afraid. Whispers spread. Mafia. It had to be the Mafia. Who in this neighborhood was mixed up with them? Elena stood beside Sophia, her face drained pale. Oh my God. They really came. The middle car door opened. Dominic Rossi stepped out. Charcoal gray suit, black sunglasses hiding those storm eyes. 10 men in black suits emerged from the other cars and formed a line behind him. Like an army, Dominic lifted his head and stared straight at Sophia's apartment window, as if he knew exactly where she was standing, as if his eyes could see through walls. Sophia drew a deep breath, then stepped away from the window. She went down the stairs, one step at a time, her heart racing, but her feet steady. She had nothing left to fear. She'd already lost everything. When she stepped out of the building, Dominic was waiting. The sunglasses were gone, gray eyes fixed on her without blinking. In his hand was a black shopping bag with the logo of a luxury fashion brand Sophia had only ever seen in magazines. Miss Carter, Mr. Rossi. He handed her the bag without another word. Sophia opened it. Inside was a black women's suit, the fabric soft as silk, the tailoring flawless. She didn't need to see a price tag to know it cost more than a month of her old paycheck. Maybe more than a year. I don't need. Put it on. Dominic cut her off, his voice leaving no room for argument. Today, you are not a victim. You are the person they will apologize to. Silence. 72 hours ago, you walked into that office with blood on your uniform, and they looked at you like trash. Dominic went on, his voice low and cold. Today, they will look at you like someone they have to kneel for. Sophia met his eyes. She understood. This wasn't about clothes. It was about power, about status, about making Hartwell and Margaret Cole see that she was no longer the poor nurse they could grind into the floor. She took the bag. 15 minutes later, Sophia sat in the Maybach beside Dominic. The black suit fit her like it had been custom-made. Her hair was pinned neatly up, her back straight. She stared out the window, watching Manhattan slide past. Silence filled the ride. Finally, Sophia spoke. What are you going to do? Pay my debt, Dominic said evenly. No blood, right? Sophia asked, turning to him. Dominic looked back, gray eyes meeting hers. The expression was hard to read. Do you want blood? No, Sophia said. I want justice. A brief silence. Then Dominic gave a small nod. Then you'll have justice. The convoy stopped in front of St. Vincent Hospital. The door opened. Dominic stepped out first, then turned back and held out his hand to Sophia. She looked at that hand for a second, then placed hers in it. His hand was warm and steady, like the promise he made 72 hours ago. They walked into the hospital lobby. 10 men in black suits followed behind, their footsteps measured like a marching unit. Hospital staff froze. Patients turned their heads. Whispers raced across the lobby like fire through dry grass. Who is that? Mafia. Oh my God. Look at the girl walking beside him. Is that Sophia? Sophia Carter? Sophia crossed the lobby where 72 hours ago she'd been thrown out like a criminal. Former co-workers stood on either side, mouths hanging open. No one could speak. The poor nurse, they remembered, was gone. In her place was a woman in an expensive suit, walking beside the most powerful mafia boss in New York. Back straight, eyes forward, bowing to no one. A security guard tried to block them. You can't come in here. Vincent Caruso didn't need to do more than glance at him. One look. The guard stepped back, his face turning pale. They entered the elevator and went up to the 5th floor. The executive offices. The secretary shot to her feet when she saw them. You don't have an appointment. You can't. Dominic didn't slow down. He didn't look at the secretary. He walked straight to Dr. Richard Hartwell's office door and shoved it open without knocking. The door flew wide, and Sophia saw the man who had fired her from the hospital. Hartwell was sitting behind his desk and sprang up as if he'd been shocked. His eyes went wide with horror, as if he'd just seen a ghost. Who are you people? This is a hospital. Not a place for you to barge in like this, Hartwell shouted, his voice trying to sound authoritative but trembling. Then he saw Sophia standing beside Dominic. The color drained from Hartwell's face the way water drains from a bathtub. Margaret Cole sat in the chair across from him, the coffee cup in her hand slipping free and shattering on the floor, brown liquid spreading out like a bloodstain. Dominic said nothing. He walked to the chair opposite Hartwell's desk and sat down as if it were his throne. One leg crossed over the other, back leaning into the seat, completely at ease, as if this room belonged to him. Sit down, Dr. Hartwell. You have no right to order me around. Hartwell still tried. This is my office. I'll call security. Vincent Caruso stepped forward and set a thick folder on the desk. The heavy sound landed like a hammer driving nails into a coffin. Hartwell stared at the folder, then at Dominic, then back at the folder. Slowly, he sat down. Dominic spoke, his voice low and cold as ice. "Do you know who Miss Carter saved on Thursday morning?" Silence. "Isabella Rossi." "My sister." Hartwell went pale, recognizing the name. His eyes widened in horror. You're Dominic Rossi? For the past 72 hours. My people have been very busy, Dr. Hartwell." Dominic opened the folder and turned the pages one by one, slowly, deliberately, like a judge reading a death sentence. Page 1. Records of bribes from PharmaCorp. $340,000 over 3 years to prescribe expensive, unnecessary medication to patients. Hartwell stammered. That's a misunderstanding." Dominic didn't bother to answer. He flipped to page 2. A list of 14 nurses wrongfully fired over the last 5 years. Sarah Miller. Official reason: tardiness. Reality: she stayed to resuscitate a 6-year-old child in cardiac arrest and was late to your meeting. The child lived. She lost her job. Jenny Park. Reason: violation of policy. Reality: she refused to prescribe a drug that PharmaCorp was paying you to push. She wanted to protect patients. You fired her. Michael Torres. Reason: inappropriate attitude. Reality: he reported you to the medical board for taking bribes. You silenced him by firing him. Dominic lifted his gaze, storm gray eyes cutting through Hartwell. 14 people. All of them had one thing in common: poor. No lawyers. No one to protect them. No voice. You thought you could crush them and no one would ever know. He turned to page 3. Photos of Hartwell and Margaret Cole in a hotel room. An affair. While both of them had families. Margaret Cole broke down sobbing, her face white as paper. Page 4. Records of embezzling $2,300,000 from the hospital's charity fund. Money meant for poor patients. Money you put in your own pocket. Dominic closed the folder, the sound like thunder in the silent room. Hartwell shook, sweat streaming down his forehead. What do you want?" Dominic looked at him without blinking. 1. Sophia Carter is reinstated immediately with a public apology. 2. You and Margaret Cole resign today. 3. The 14 nurses who were wrongfully fired will be contacted, compensated, and given an official apology. 4. The hospital will establish a fund to protect medical staff, so no one is treated like Miss Carter ever again. Silence. Otherwise, every piece of this goes to the FBI and the New York Times within 1 hour. Hartwell tried one last time. "We can negotiate." Dominic stood and walked up to Hartwell. He leaned down, storm gray, eyes cold as ice, staring straight into the eyes of the man who had humiliated Sophia. "You're not in a position to negotiate, Dr. Hartwell. You're in a position to beg." Hartwell looked around, searching for help, but there was none. Margaret Cole was sobbing uncontrollably. The secretary had vanished. Security didn't dare come close. He looked at Sophia, standing silent beside Dominic. The nurse he'd thrown files into her face 72 hours ago, called trash, chased out like a dog. And now Dr. Richard Hartwell, director of nursing at St. Vincent Hospital, slowly dropped to his knees on the floor, knees hitting the ground, back curling, like a sinner before a court. "Miss Carter, I'm sorry. Please forgive me." Sophia looked down at the man kneeling at her feet, the man who had taken everything from her, the man who had laughed while tearing up her file, the man who had called her trailer trash. She felt no triumph, no thrill of victory, only sadness. Sadness that a man like him had been given the power to destroy the lives of 14 innocent people. "I don't forgive you," Sophia said, her voice calm and clear. "But I want to meet those 14 people. They need to know they weren't forgotten." Dominic looked at her, and in those storm gray eyes, something shifted. Something he had never seen in anyone. Strength that didn't need violence, justice that didn't need blood. A poor girl with no power, no money, but something he and his entire empire didn't have: integrity. And it was more beautiful than anything Dominic Rossi had ever seen in his life. 2 in the afternoon, the same day. The lobby of St. Vincent Hospital was packed wall to wall. Press from across the city flooded in, cameras rolling, flashbulbs firing without pause. The viral video of the nurse fired for stopping to save someone had ignited the story nationwide. The hashtag Justice for Sophia was still trending, and now everyone wanted to know how the story would end. The hospital board stood on the platform, faces tight with strain. The chairman, a silver-haired man in a gray suit, read the statement in a trembling voice. Dr. Richard Hartwell and Miss Margaret Cole have been terminated, effective immediately. Both are under investigation for allegations of bribery, embezzlement of the charity fund, and abuse of power. Miss Sophia Carter has been reinstated with an official apology from the hospital administration. St. Vincent Hospital will implement a new policy called the Good Samaritan Protocol. From now on, any medical staff member who saves someone in an emergency will be protected and will not be disciplined for that reason. 14 nurses who were wrongfully fired over the last 5 years will be contacted, compensated, and given an official apology. Applause erupted through the lobby. Sophia stood beside the podium, the black suit still on her body, but now it no longer felt foreign on her. She looked out over the crowd and saw them. 8 of the 14 nurses Hartwell had wrongfully fired. They had come. Sarah Miller, the 45-year-old woman who had stayed to resuscitate a child in cardiac arrest. Jenny Park, 32, who had refused to prescribe a harmful drug. Michael Torres, 38, who had dared to report Hartwell. They pushed through the crowd and reached Sophia. Sarah Miller wrapped her in a hug, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. Thank you for not letting us be forgotten. Jenny Park took Sophia's hand. We thought no one remembered us anymore. We thought the world had forgotten us. Michael Torres nodded, eyes red. You fought for all of us. Elena squeezed through the crowd and rushed in to hug Sophia. You did it, Sophia. You did it. Sophia held her friend, held the people who had been victims like her, and for the first time in days, she felt relief. In the circle of arms, she looked toward the glass doors. Dominic stood outside, in the shadow of the hallway, not stepping in. He watched her from a distance, gray eyes unreadable. Then he gave a slight nod, a small nod. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness as if he had never been there at all. 7 in the evening. Sophia stepped out of the hospital, exhausted but lighter. The longest day of her life had finally ended. She had her job back. 14 people had been cleared. Hartwell and Margaret Cole would pay. It should have ended here. But Dominic Rossi was waiting beside the car, alone. No bodyguards, no Vincent Caruso. Only him, leaning against the black Maybach, storm gray eyes watching her as she approached. Are you satisfied? He asked, voice low. Sophia stopped in front of him. You didn't have to do all of this. The Rossi family owes you. This was only paying part of it. Silence. The night wind cut cold. Sophia pulled her coat tighter and looked at the man standing in front of her. The most powerful mafia boss in New York, the man the whole city feared. But tonight, standing alone in the dark, he looked almost ordinary. Why did you help me? Sophia asked softly. Why? Really? Just because of a debt? Dominic didn't answer right away. He looked into the distance, toward Manhattan's skyscrapers glittering in the night. For the first time, the coldness in his face cracked. My mother. She was a nurse. Sophia stayed silent, waiting. 25 years ago, a small hospital in Brooklyn. Dominic's voice dropped, as if he were speaking to himself more than to her. She was fired for staying to save a patient instead of going to a board meeting. The patient lived. She lost her job. Sophia felt her heart tighten. No one helped her. My father didn't have the power he has now. He was only a small-time dealer trying to build something. No money, no connections. No one stood up for her. Silence. She died 3 years later. Poor, exhausted, hopeless. Dominic turned back to Sophia, and in those storm-gray eyes, she saw pain. Old pain, deep, never healed. When I saw you standing in that office with blood on your uniform, not bowing your head, not begging, I saw my mother. His voice caught. If someone had helped her then. The sentence trailed off. It didn't need to be finished. Sophia understood. She understood why he had done all of this, not only because of Isabella, not only because of a debt, but because an 11-year-old boy once watched his mother be treated unjustly and couldn't do anything to save her. Sophia didn't think. She reached out and touched Dominic's hand. For the first time, her small hand against his. I'm sorry about your mother. Dominic looked down at her hand on his. He didn't pull away, didn't avoid it. He only stared, as if it were the strangest thing he had ever felt. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Isabella wants to invite you to dinner, Dominic said, his voice softer than before, with the family. Sophia looked at him. Family? If you're not afraid. Sophia smiled, the first smile of the long, exhausting day. I told you from the beginning. Dominic watched her for a long moment. Then he stepped to the car door and opened it. For the first time, opening a door for someone himself, without any bodyguard. After you. The car rolled out of Manhattan, crossed the bridge, and headed toward Long Island. Sophia sat beside Dominic in silence, watching the scenery change from skyscrapers to tree-lined roads. She imagined what the home of the most powerful Mafia family in New York would look like. High walls, security cameras everywhere, guards posted at every corner, like in the movies. But when the car stopped, Sophia was surprised. The house in front of her wasn't a showy mansion. It was a large Italian-style home, pale yellow walls, a red tile roof, and rows of deep purple lavender lining the walkway. Warm, simple, like a house in a painting. Dominic opened the car door for her and led her inside. The smell of Italian food filled the air. Garlic, tomatoes, basil, toasted bread. The living room was spacious but not cold. Floral upholstered sofas, warm yellow lamps, and family photos covering the walls. Pictures of Isabella as a child, grinning wide with a missing tooth. Pictures of Dominic as a teenager, skinny, wearing glasses, nothing like the cold boss he was now. A picture of a beautiful woman with black hair, gray eyes, and a gentle smile. Dominic's mother. Sophia recognized it at once. She had the exact same eyes as her son. There you are. Isabella ran out from the back room and threw her arms around Sophia. She looked so much better, with only a small bandage left on her forehead. Where is my grandson? A warm, deep man's voice came from behind them. Sophia turned and saw a man stepping out of the kitchen. Marcus Rossi, now 67 years old. Hair white with age, skin lined with years, but eyes warm as a winter fire. He wore a plaid shirt, a flour-stained apron, and held a wooden spoon in his hand. He didn't look like a mafia boss. He looked like a kind grandfather cooking dinner for his family. Marcus walked up to Sophia, set the spoon down, and took both of her hands. You're Sophia, the one who saved my daughter. Yes, sir, Sophia said, a little awkward. Marcus studied her for a long moment, his eyes shining. Then he smiled, the warmest smile Sophia had ever seen. Your family now. They sat down at the table, and Sophia couldn't believe what she was seeing. Dinner was cooked by Marcus himself. Pasta with fresh tomato sauce, meatballs from a family recipe, toasted bread crisp and fragrant, red wine from the family cellar. No servants, no guards standing around, just 4 people sitting around a table, eating and talking like an ordinary family. Isabella told stories about Dominic when he was little, her eyes glittering with mischief. You know, he used to want to be a doctor. Before Mom died, Sophia glanced at Dominic. He was staring down at his plate, looking faintly uncomfortable. He was such a good student, Isabella went on, ignoring her brother's discomfort. Always top of the class. Teachers said he could have gotten into Harvard. But after Mom was gone, he had to carry the family. He dropped out, worked with Dad, became the man he had to become. Silence. Sophia looked at Dominic, and for the first time, she didn't see a mafia boss. She saw a son who had lost his mother too early and had to give up his dream to protect his family. After dinner, Marcus led Sophia out to the balcony. The Long Island night was quiet, the sky full of stars. Nothing like the New York sky where you could never see a single one. You know, my son looks at you differently, Marcus said gently. Sophia's face warmed. What do you mean, sir? For the first time since his mother died 20 years ago, Marcus looked at her, eyes deep. Dominic hasn't let anyone in. He built walls around his heart the day his mother died. No one could touch it. No one could make him care. But you're different. Sophia didn't know what to say. I don't know where you'll go with my son, Marcus smiled. But I want you to know one thing. You're welcome here, always. 10 at night. Dominic drove Sophia back to Brooklyn. The car stopped in front of her familiar, miserable building, but tonight it didn't feel as dark as it used to. Thank you, Sophia said, turning to Dominic. For today, for dinner, for everything. You don't owe me thanks, but I want to say it. Silence. Gray eyes watched her in the dark. Next week, if you're free, there's something I want to show you. What is it? Another part of the Rossi family, the part no one knows. Sophia nodded, opened the car door, and stepped out. She paused and looked back. Dominic was still watching her, gray eyes glinting under the streetlight. She gave a small smile. Good night, Mr. Rossi. Then she turned and walked inside, but she knew he was still watching, until she disappeared behind the door. 2 weeks passed like a dream. Sophia went back to work at St. Vincent, but everything was different now. Co-workers looked at her with admiration. Patients recognized her from the viral video, asking for photos, asking for autographs. The poor nurse who had once been fired had become a symbol of justice. The hashtag Justice for Sofia was still being mentioned on social media. Isabella came to see her almost every day. They became close friends, eating lunch together, texting constantly. Isabella told her about her life, about the lonely years of growing up in a Mafia family, about never having real friends because everyone was afraid of her brother. She said Sofia was the first friend who liked her for herself, not because she was a Rossi. And Dominic. He appeared by chance whenever he brought Isabella by, waiting outside the hospital, nodding at Sofia through the glass, then disappearing. But every night Sofia worked a shift. A box of black coffee with no sugar, and bread from the best Italian bakery in Manhattan arrived for her. No card, no note, but she knew who it was from. 1 week after the dinner on Long Island, Dominic called her. "There's something I want to show you. You remember, don't you?" Sofia remembered. She agreed. He picked her up after her shift and drove to an old building in Brooklyn, a poor neighborhood, brick walls peeling, graffiti everywhere. Sofia didn't understand why he was bringing her here. Then she stepped inside, and she was shocked. It was a medical clinic. Bright, clean, modern. Hundreds of people were lined up waiting to be seen. Elderly men and women. Children. Homeless people. Single mothers holding small babies. They didn't pay. It was all free. A small sign hung on the wall. Rossi Foundation. 15 years of community service. This is... Sofia turned to Dominic, unable to believe her eyes. "My mother wanted to open a clinic for the poor," Dominic said, voice low. "She didn't get the chance. So we did it for her." Silence. "Not everything my family does is criminal, Miss Carter." Sofia looked around. A doctor was examining an old man coughing hard. Nurses were handing out free medication. Volunteers were playing with children in the corner. Dominic walked over to a young mother holding a sick child. He knelt down to the child's eye level and spoke gently to him. His voice was soft, nothing like the cold boss all of New York feared. The child laughed and reached out to touch Dominic's face. Sofia felt her heart melt. "Why hide it?" she asked when he came back. "Why not let people know?" Dominic stood and looked at her. "Because the world only wants to see us as monsters. They don't want the truth to be more complicated than that." 3 days later, midnight, Sofia was asleep when her phone rang. The nursing home in Florida. Grandma Martha had been taken to the hospital. Heart pain. Sofia sat bolt upright, hands shaking, tears spilling. No, 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 not her. Elena woke and wrapped her arms around her. "Breathe, Sofia, breathe." "I have to go," Sofia said, her voice breaking. "I have to fly to Florida right now, but plane tickets at this hour." Elena looked at her phone. "So expensive." "I'll lend you." The doorbell rang. Midnight. Who would come at midnight? Sofia opened the door. Dominic stood there, gray eyes on her. "A private jet. It takes off in 2 hours." Sofia stared at him, not understanding. "How did you know?" "Vincent has someone watching to protect you." He heard the call. Sofia wanted to refuse. She already owed him too much. But Dominic added, his voice gentle, "This is your family now. Don't refuse family." They flew to Florida on the Rossi family's private plane. Dominic sat beside her the entire flight, saying nothing, only holding her hand when she cried. Grandma Martha recovered. It was only a mild heart event. The doctor said she would be all right. When Sofia brought Dominic into the hospital room, Martha opened her eyes and looked at the tall man standing beside her granddaughter. "So handsome," she said with a weak smile. "Is that your boyfriend?" Both Sofia and Dominic blushed. "No, Grandma," Sofia stammered. He's my friend." Martha looked at them, old eyes sharp and knowing. Then she motioned Sofia closer and whispered in her ear, "He looks at you like you're his whole world, like your grandfather looked at me back then. Don't let it slip away, my girl." On the flight back, Dominic fell asleep. Maybe he was exhausted. Maybe it was the first time he allowed himself to relax beside someone. His head rested on Sofia's shoulder, his breathing even, his face peaceful. No more coldness, no more walls, no more Mafia boss the whole city feared. Just a tired man, sleeping, trusting her enough to sleep. Sofia watched him in the dim cabin light, and she understood. She had fallen too deep already. In a miserable apartment on the outskirts of New York, Richard Hartwell sat in the dark, a half-empty bottle of whiskey in his hand. His beard had gone untouched for days. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot from sleeplessness and alcohol. The television in front of him was broadcasting the evening news. Hero nurse Sofia Carter honored. The Good Samaritan protocol adopted at hospitals across New York State. Dr. Richard Hartwell and Miss Margaret Cole facing criminal charges. Hartwell hurled the whiskey bottle at the television. The screen shattered, sparks spitting out. He staggered to his feet and looked around the cheap rental apartment. He had lost everything. His job, the reputation he had built over 30 years, his money frozen for the investigation. Margaret Cole had left, gone back to her husband, and dumped all the blame on him to get a lighter sentence. All because of one poor nurse from Brooklyn. All because of Sophia Carter. His phone vibrated. An unknown number. Hartwell answered, his voice rough and thick. "Who is this?" "Dr. Hartwell. I hear you have a problem with Dominic Rossi." A man's voice on the other end was low and cold. "Who are you?" "Marco Benedetti. I think we can help each other." 2 days later, Sophia finished her night shift and stepped out of the hospital at 6 in the morning. It was still dark, the streets nearly empty. She walked home as she always did, turning into the familiar shortcut alley near her apartment, footsteps behind her. She turned. No time to react. A black cloth bag dropped over her head. Someone's hand clamped over her mouth. She tried to scream, but no sound came. She was yanked hard into a vehicle. The door slammed. The engine roared. Then darkness swallowed everything. Sophia woke in an abandoned warehouse. The smell of damp, the stink of machine oil, the sour rot of dead rats. Her head throbbed as if a hammer had been driven into it. She tried to move, but her hands and feet were tied tight to a chair. The rope bit into her skin, burning. A weak light hung from a single ceiling bulb. Footsteps sounded out of the dark. A man stepped forward, a man who was 50 years old, obese, a face like a pig, a flattened nose, small squinting eyes, a grin split wide, revealing yellowed teeth. Marco Benedetti, the Mafia boss who was the Rossi family's rival. Sophia had heard Isabella mention that name. The man who had wanted to overthrow Dominic for a long time but had never had the chance. "Miss Carter," Benedetti sneered. "Finally, I get to meet you." He moved closer, bent down to study her. His breath reeked of cigars. "You're Rossi's weakness. You know that? Who would have thought that ice block could love?" Sophia didn't beg. She didn't cry. She stared straight into his eyes, her gaze cold. "You think kidnapping me will make Dominic afraid?" Benedetti laughed loud. "A girl with guts. I like that." More footsteps sounded behind him. Someone else was coming. Sophia turned her head, and shock hit her like a blow. Richard Hartwell stepped out of the shadows, thinner, more haggard, but his eyes were wild, full of hatred. "You," Sophia breathed out, understanding everything at once. "You thought you'd won, Miss Carter?" Hartwell twisted into a warped smile as he stepped closer. "You took everything from me. My job, my reputation, my money, my future. You think I'd just let it go? Now it's my turn to take from you." "You're insane," Sophia said, her voice shaking, not from fear but from fury. "You think Dominic will let this go?" Hartwell laughed even harder, the sound echoing off the empty warehouse. "I want him to come. That's the whole plan. Benedetti has an army waiting. When Dominic Rossi comes to save you, he'll walk straight into the trap. 2 birds, 1 stone. Hartwell turned to Benedetti and nodded. "Film it and send it to Rossi. Let him see his little doll." One of the men stepped forward, a camera in his hand. A red light blinked. Recording began. Sophia looked into the lens, and inside her it wasn't fear that rose. It was worry. Not for herself. For Dominic. She knew he would come. She knew he would do anything to save her, and that was exactly what terrified her most. Dominic Rossi's penthouse. 8 in the morning. The phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A video attachment. Dominic opened it, and his world collapsed. Sophia sat on a chair, hands and feet tied, her lips split and bloody. Hartwell stood beside her, laughing like a madman. Benedetti stood behind him, a cigar on his mouth. "Mr. Rossi," Hartwell said in the video, voice shrill, "you thought money and power could solve everything? You thought you could crush me and not pay for it?" Hartwell stepped closer to Sophia, grabbed her hair, and yanked her head back. Sophia didn't cry out. She only clenched her teeth. "She'll die because of you," Hartwell whispered to the camera. "Slowly, painfully, piece by piece. So you'll have time to regret it." Benedetti stepped forward, grinning wide. "Warehouse 47, Brooklyn Docks, alone, or we'll send her back to you in pieces." The video ended. The screen went black. Dominic stood motionless. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Then the explosion came. His fist drove straight into the wall. Blood sprayed. Bone might have cracked. But he didn't feel pain. He felt only rage. The rage he had held back for 20 years. Dominic hurled the desk. 100-pound slab of oak flew across the room like a toy. He threw a chair, smashed the computer screen, ripped curtains from their track. The growl ripping out of his throat no longer sounded human. It was the sound of an animal, a beast that had been locked away too long, finally let loose. Vincent Caruso and 5 guards stood in the doorway. No one dared move. They had followed Dominic for decades. They had seen him kill without blinking, but they had never seen him like this. "Boss," Vincent called. Dominic turned. The gray eyes were now blood red. Veins stood out in his neck. His jaw was clenched so tight his teeth could crack. "Find them." Each word landed like a hammer driving nails. "I will kill every last one of them." Slowly, painfully, the way they promised her. For the first time, Vincent Caruso saw the real monster inside Dominic Rossi. The monster all of New York whispered about. The monster no one ever faced and lived. "Boss, we know that warehouse," Vincent said, steady. "Benedetti has about 20 men. Call everyone," Dominic snarled. 50 men, fully armed. "We hit in 2 hours. No one survives." Vincent nodded and turned away to make calls. The door behind them opened. Isabella ran in, her face wet with tears. "Dom, I heard. Sophia." Dominic didn't look at his sister. "Go back to your room." Isabella didn't move. She stepped in front of him and stared up into his eyes. "Are you going to kill them?" Silence. "Do you remember what Sophia said?" Isabella asked, her voice shaking. "She wanted justice, not blood. She told you that." "Shut up," Dominic roared. Isabella stumbled back, eyes wide with fear. She had never seen her brother like this, had never heard him shout at her. Dominic looked at his sister's face, saw the fear in her eyes. Fear of him, and he remembered. If he killed them, he would lose Sophia. She would never forgive him. She would look at him the way Isabella was looking at him now, with fear, with distance. But if he didn't kill them, how could he protect her? How could he make them pay? His mother's face rose in his mind, her gentle smile, her soft voice. "You're going to be a doctor, aren't you? You're going to save people, not hurt them." Then Sophia's voice sounded, clear as if she were standing in front of him. "I want justice, not revenge." Dominic closed his eyes, drew in one deep breath. Then another, then another. When he opened his eyes, the rage was still there, boiling in his veins, but controlled, caged. "Vincent." "Yes, boss?" "Change the plan. We go in, but we don't kill." Vincent froze, eyes widening. "Boss? Take them alive, all of them. Hand them to the police with the evidence," Dominic said, voice cold as ice. "Sophia wants justice. She will have justice." He started for the door, then stopped. "But if they have touched a single hair on her head..." His voice dropped, a threat. "I will break my promise." 3 hours crawled by inside the damp warehouse. Sophia sat on the chair, hands and feet still bound tight, but her mind was completely clear. She watched everything: Benedetti's position, the number of his men, the entrances and exits, and most important, the camera was still recording. A small red light blinked in the dark corner. They had forgotten to turn it off after filming the video they sent to Dominic. Hartwell grew drunker by the minute. The second bottle of whiskey was already half gone. He staggered through the warehouse, eyes bloodshot, muttering under his breath. "Rossi isn't coming." Hartwell sneered and stepped in front of Sophia. "He abandoned you. See? You're nothing to him. Just a toy. Used and thrown away." Sophia didn't answer. She looked at the camera. The red light still blinked. Everything was being captured. An idea formed in her mind. Dangerous. Insane. But maybe the only way. "Dr. Hartwell," Sophia said, her voice strangely calm. "You know what? You fired me because I saved someone." Hartwell turned, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "Now you're about to go to prison for kidnapping," Sophia went on, her tone edged with mockery. "So who's really the stupid one here?" Hartwell's face flushed red. "Shut up. You fired 14 innocent nurses." Sophia didn't stop. "You took bribes from PharmaCorp. You stole money from the charity fund. How many patients have you killed with the fake drugs you prescribed?" "Shut up," Hartwell screamed. "You're a murderer," Sophia said, staring straight into his eyes. "You kill with a pen and prescription pads. You're worse than any mafia boss." Hartwell lost control. He lunged and slapped Sophia hard across the face. Her lips split, blood spilling down her chin. But she didn't cry out. "Shut up. Shut up," Hartwell howled, hitting her again. "Who do you think you are? You're just trash. Trailer trash. People like you don't deserve to live. So you can do whatever you want?" Sophia asked, blood on her mouth, but her voice still calm. So you admit everything? The bribes? The embezzlement? Killing patients? Hartwell screamed, completely out of his mind. I can do whatever I want. People like you don't deserve to know. I built my career for 30 years. I deserve everything. Pharmacorp paid me because I deserve it. The charity fund is my money. Poor nurses like you have no right to judge me. Sophia smiled. The blood on her lips looked like red lipstick. Thank you for confessing on your own camera. Hartwell froze. Then, slowly, he turned and looked at the camera in the corner. The red light was still blinking, recording from the very beginning. No, Hartwell stammered. No, no, no. Outside the warehouse, Dominic's team had surrounded the place. 50 men, fully armed, silent as the night. Vincent Caruso stood beside Dominic, checking the comms. Boss, let me take a team around back. You wait here. Dominic didn't answer. He stared at the warehouse, gray eyes cold as ice. I go straight in. Boss, it's dangerous. I go straight in. Dominic cut him off, voice leaving no room for argument. Then he walked toward the front door. Alone. No gun, no knife. Only his hands and a rage held tightly in check. The warehouse door burst open. Dominic stepped inside like death made flesh. Benedetti's men rushed him, guns in hand. But Rossi's team poured in from every side. A short firefight, Rossi overwhelming them completely. Gunshots, screams, bodies hitting the floor. 3 of Benedetti's guards charged Dominic, thinking the boss without a weapon would be an easy target. A fatal mistake. Dominic dropped the first with a punch to the throat. The second had his arm snapped before he could pull the trigger. The third was slammed down, his head cracking against the concrete. Not killed, but ruthless, efficient, painful. Benedetti tried to run for the back exit, but Vincent was waiting. The obese boss was pinned to the ground, hands cuffed behind his back, face pressed into the filthy floor. Hartwell crumpled in a corner, sobbing like a child. Please spare me. Please spare me. I'll do anything. Dominic didn't even look at him. He sprinted toward the small room at the end of the warehouse, where Sophia was being held. The door was locked. Dominic kicked it in, and he saw her. Sophia sat there, hands and feet tied, lips split and bloody, hair in disarray. But her eyes were still bright, still calm, still the Sophia he knew. Dominic dropped to his knees, his hands shaking as he cut the ropes. Are you all right? Did they do anything to you? I provoked Hartwell into confessing on his own camera, Sophia said, voice raw but edged with pride. It's all recorded. Bribes, embezzlement, killing patients, everything. Dominic looked at her, half furious, half amazed. You're out of your mind. I learned from you. He was about to say something, about to scold her for taking that risk, about to ask if she had any idea how terrified he'd been. But no words came. Instead, he pulled her into him. The first embrace, tight, painful, desperate, as if he had thought he'd lost her forever, as if he couldn't believe she was still alive, still here, in his arms. I thought I lost you, Dominic whispered into her hair, voice breaking. Sophia held him back, her face pressed to his chest. You didn't kill them, because I wanted justice. Sophia lifted her face to look at him. Thank you. Don't thank me, Dominic said, voice low. If they had touched you one more time. But they didn't, Sophia said. And you chose right. Silence. They looked at each other in the warehouse darkness, as the chaos outside began to fade. Dominic helped Sophia stand, one arm still wrapped around her waist. Call the police, and call the press, he told Vincent, who stood in the doorway. Tonight, everyone will know the truth about Hartwell, about Benedetti, about everything. 2 weeks after the rescue night, the hearing hall of the New York State Medical Board was packed. Reporters poured in from everywhere. CNN, NBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post. Cameras pointed in every direction. Flashbulbs fired without stopping. The kidnapping video and Hartwell's confession had spread across the world. 50 million views in 2 weeks. The hashtags Justice for Sophia and Good Samaritan Act were trending nationwide. The story of a poor nurse fired for saving someone, then kidnapped, then provoking her enemy into confessing his crimes on camera, had reached the hearts of millions. Sophia had been invited as the key witness in the hearing. But she didn't come alone. The doors to the hall opened. Sophia walked in, and behind her were 14 people. 14 nurses Hartwell had crushed over the past 5 years. They wore spotless white uniforms and stood in a line, backs straight, heads held high. Sarah Miller, Jenny Park, Michael Torres, and 11 others Sophia had spent the last 2 weeks searching for, contacting, persuading to stand up. The room fell silent as they entered. The board chair, a silver-haired woman with a stern face, struck the gavel. The hearing will begin. We invite the witnesses to speak. Sarah Miller stepped up to the podium first, 45 years old. Hair threaded with gray, the tired eyes of someone who had fought too long. 8 years ago, I was a nurse at St. Vincent Hospital, Sarah began, her voice trembling but clear. One night on shift, a 6-year-old child was brought into the emergency room. His heart stopped. I stayed and worked on him for 45 minutes. He lived. Sarah's voice caught. But I was late to a meeting with Dr. Hartwell. He fired me for being late. No one asked why I was late. No one cared that I had just saved a life. I lost my job, lost my home, lost my health insurance. My son couldn't go to college because I didn't have money anymore. Tears ran down Sarah's cheeks. 8 years. I carried that shame for 8 years. I thought I had done something wrong. I thought I deserved to be punished, until I saw Sophia on television. And I understood. I wasn't wrong. The system was wrong. Michael Torres stepped up next. 38 years old, tall but thin, like someone who had lived through too many sleepless nights. I discovered Hartwell was taking bribes from PharmaCorp, Michael said, voice firm. He prescribed expensive medication patients didn't need to get kickbacks. I reported him to the medical board. No one believed me. Hartwell fired me for an inappropriate attitude. Silence. It took me 3 years to find a new job. 3 years living on unemployment. 3 years being seen as a troublemaker. Because I dared to tell the truth. Jenny Park stepped up last, 32 years old. Small, but her eyes were unbreakable. I refused to prescribe medication a patient didn't need, Jenny said. The medication PharmaCorp paid Hartwell for every time it was prescribed. I told him it was wrong. He told me I didn't fit the hospital culture. Jenny's voice shook. I only wanted to protect my patients, and I was punished for it. One by one, each of the 14 nurses stepped forward. One story after another, one tear after another. The room was silent. Many people were crying. Reporters forgot to take pictures. This wasn't only Sophia's story. This was the story of a system rotting from the inside out. Then, it was Sophia's turn. She walked to the podium and looked out over the packed hall. Hundreds of faces stared up at her, waiting. Sophia drew a deep breath. I'm not here to talk about me, she began, her voice carrying through the hall. I'm here for the 14 women and men standing beside me, for the hundreds, the thousands of others we don't know by name, the people crushed by the system for daring to do the right thing. Silence. 4 weeks ago, I had a choice, Sophia continued. Show up to work on time, or stop to save someone who was dying on a sidewalk. I chose to stop. And I was punished for it. Her voice grew stronger, but I was not the first. Sarah Miller stopped to save a child. Fired. Michael Torres stopped to tell the truth. Fired. Jenny Park stopped to protect a patient. Fired. We were punished for doing the right thing. Sophia looked straight into the cameras, as if she were speaking to the whole world. And if a system punishes people for doing the right thing, that system must change. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Right now. Her voice rang out, full of power. Don't let our story repeat. Protect the ones who dare to stop. Protect the ones who choose saving a life over saving a job. Because if no one dares to stop, who will save us when we are lying on the sidewalk? Who will save our children? Our parents? The people we love? Silence held for 3 seconds. Then one person stood and clapped. Then 2. Then 10. Then the entire hall rose, applause roaring like thunder. Many people cried. Reporters kept filming, tears on their cheeks. The chair struck the gavel, but she was wiping her own eyes. The board will vote right now, she declared, on passing the Good Samaritan Act for medical staff of New York State. The vote took place. The results appeared on the screen. Yes, 12 votes. No, 0 votes. The act passed. The hall erupted. Cheers, sobs, applause that wouldn't stop. The 14 nurses embraced one another, tears streaming. The prosecutor announced Richard Hartwell would be charged with bribery, embezzlement, kidnapping, and threats. He faced 25 years in prison. Marco Benedetti was charged with kidnapping, extortion, and organized crime. St. Vincent Hospital officially apologized and compensated all 14 nurses who had been wrongfully fired. Sophia stood among her former co-workers, amid the noise and the flashbulbs, and she looked out over the hall. And she saw him. Dominic stood in the very back row, in the shadows, the way he always did. No one recognized that the most powerful mafia boss in New York was standing there, but Sophia did, and this time, he was smiling. Not the cold smile, not the mocking smile, a real one, a smile only she ever got to see. Sophia gave him a small nod. We did it. Late night after the hearing. Dominic Rossi's penthouse was silent as paper. Sophia sat by the wide window, looking out at Manhattan glittering below. Millions of lights blinked like falling stars spilled onto the earth. The city never slept. The city that, a month ago, she never imagined she belonged to. She had been only a poor nurse from Brooklyn, living in a miserable apartment, counting every dollar to make rent. Now she sat here, in a $1 million penthouse, after changing an entire legal system. Life was strange. Footsteps behind her. Dominic walked up and stood beside her at the window. He didn't say anything, only looked out at the city with her. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. You changed an entire system, Dominic said at last, his voice low, without a single bullet. That's my way, Sophia replied, eyes still on the distance. I know, Dominic said, and I'm learning. Sophia turned to look at him. The city lights fell across Dominic's face, sharpening his hard angles and the depth of those gray eyes. Dominic, why didn't you kill them? Benedetti, Hartwell, you could have. Silence stretched. Dominic didn't look at her, his gaze still fixed on the window. Because if I killed them, I would lose you. Sophia said nothing. Her heart began to beat faster. All my life, I solved everything with violence, Dominic continued, his voice slow and low. It was the only language I knew. Anyone who threatened my family, I killed. Anyone who betrayed me, I killed. Anyone who touched the people I loved, I killed. Simple. Effective. No thinking required. He turned to her. But you speak a different language. You stood in front of Hartwell with no weapon, no power, no money, and you won. You stood in front of the board with nothing but truth and tears, and you changed an entire system. Silence. The day you walked into Hartwell's office, blood on your uniform, not bowing your head, not begging, Dominic said, as if remembering. I knew you were different. I've met thousands of people in my life. Politicians, businessmen, criminals, police. Everyone bows to power. Everyone has a price. Everyone is afraid. But you weren't. He looked straight into Sophia's eyes. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. And you don't need violence to be strong. Sophia drew in a deep breath. You're Mafia, Dominic. You'll always be Mafia. I know. I can't change you. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice soft as breath. No, you can't change me. But you make me want to change myself. Silence. Are you afraid? Dominic asked. Knowing who I am, knowing my world, knowing what I've done. Sophia stood and stepped closer to him. Close, too close. She lifted her hand and touched his face. Her fingers traced the line of his square jaw, the sharp cheekbone, the small scar near his eye she had never asked about. I told you from the beginning, Sophia said, eyes locked on his. I'm not afraid. Dominic studied her, storm gray eyes searching for something. Really? I'm afraid of something else. Afraid of what? Afraid that I fell in love with a mafia boss. Silence. The world seemed to stop turning. Dominic didn't speak. He only looked at her, looked at those warm brown eyes meeting his without fear, looked at the lips that still carried a small scar from Hartwell's slap, looked at the woman who had changed his entire world in a single month. Then his hand lifted her chin. His fingers trembled, just slightly. For the first time in his life, Dominic Rossi's hand trembled, and he kissed her. The first kiss. Not rushed, not fierce, not the way he did everything else in his life. Slow, gentle, deep. As if he had waited his whole life to do this. As if he was afraid that if he moved too fast, she would vanish like a dream. When they finally pulled apart, forehead to forehead, breath mingling, I'll burn the whole world if anyone touches you, Dominic whispered, his voice rough. I don't need you to burn the world, Sophia whispered back. I just need you to step into the light with me. Dominic looked at her. For the first time, the storm gray eyes weren't cold. They weren't the eyes of the mafia boss all of New York feared. They were only the eyes of a man in love. Then I'll try. They held each other in the Manhattan night. By the window, the glittering city spread out below. Two different worlds. Light and shadow. Justice and crime. Nurse and mafia. Becoming one. 1 year later, the world had changed. The television screen in the penthouse living room played a CNN segment. The Good Samaritan Act for medical staff in New York had been adopted by 12 other states over the past year. California, Texas, Florida, and Illinois were leading the wave of change. NBC followed with the next report. Congress was considering a federal healthcare worker protection act. A vote was expected next month. If passed, it would become the law protecting medical staff across the entire country. On Twitter, the hashtag #StopToSave had reached 100 million uses. People shared stories about the times they stopped to help strangers, about nurses, doctors, medical workers who sacrificed to save lives. On TikTok, the original video of Sophia kneeling to save Isabella on a Manhattan sidewalk had reached 200 million views. She became an icon, not because she wanted to, but because the world needed an icon. Second Chance Foundation, the fund Sophia created after the hearing. Its purpose was to support medical workers wrongfully fired across the nation. In 1 year, the foundation had helped 127 people. 127 stories, 127 lives pulled back from the edge. The original 14 nurses, the ones who stood beside Sophia at the hearing, were now the foundation's advisory board. Sarah Miller, the woman who once saved a child in cardiac arrest and lost everything, was now the executive director. Sophia gave us a voice, Sarah said in an interview. Now we help others find their voice. No one has to stay silent anymore. Sophia's story was taught in medical ethics courses at top universities: Columbia, Johns Hopkins, UCLA, Stanford. The lesson was titled, "The Carter Case, When Doing the Right Thing Costs Everything." Thousands of medical students studied her every year, studied courage, studied justice, studied what it meant to stand for what was right, even when the price could be everything. Richard Hartwell was sentenced to 22 years in prison. Bribery, embezzlement, kidnapping, threats. He sat in a small cell in a federal prison, staring through bars, thinking about the poor nurse he once called trash. Marco Benedetti was sentenced to 35 years. Kidnapping, extortion, organized crime. His empire collapsed completely. His men scattered. His territory split apart. The two men who once believed they could crush Sophia Carter were now rotting behind bars. Grandma Martha was healthy, living in a new nursing home in Florida, the best in the state, paid for by Sophia. Every week, Sophia video called her. Every month, she flew down to visit. "You did it, my girl," Martha said in the most recent call, eyes shining with pride. "Your mother is smiling in heaven. And you know what? Elena Martinez and Vincent Caruso were engaged." The news shocked both Sophia and Dominic. Somehow, in those chaotic months, while Vincent was watching to protect Sophia, he had met Elena. And they fell in love. Turns out the Mafia could love too. Elena laughed as she showed off the engagement ring. Who would have thought? Sophia hugged her friend and laughed until tears came. Who would have thought? Isabella Rossi was now the chief executive of the Rossi Foundation. She expanded the charity program and built 3 more free clinics. "You changed my brother, Sophia," Isabella told her at a family dinner. "You changed my whole family." I've never seen him smile this much. Marcus Rossi, 68, was still healthy, still cooking Sunday dinner with his own hands for the whole family. He called Sophia his daughter. Not a guest, not his son's girlfriend, a daughter. Sophia Carter was now the emergency response lead at St. Vincent. They offered her a management role. She refused. "I want to be where I can save people directly," she said, not sitting in an office signing papers. She lived with Dominic in the penthouse, but she stayed independent. She still went to work every day, still drank black coffee with no sugar. Still Sophia, the way she had always been. Dominic changed, slowly. Step by step, he shifted part of his empire into legal work, real estate, restaurants, hotels. He opened 2 more free clinics in the Bronx and Queens, named after his mother. "You changed me," Dominic said one night, as they lay beside each other in the dark. "No," Sophia said, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I only showed you who you could be." That morning, Sophia got ready for work. A spotless white nurse's uniform, hair tied neatly back, black coffee with no sugar in her hand. Dominic stood at the door, watching her. Then he stepped close and kissed her forehead. "Go save the world." Sophia smiled, a smile that lit the whole room. "Just save one person, one at a time. That's how the world changes." 5 years later. A bright sunny day in Brooklyn. Hundreds of people gathered in front of a brand new building, its white walls glowing under the sunlight. A red banner stretched across the main gate. Catherine Carter Community Hospital. Grand opening today. a free hospital for the poor, 200 beds, fully equipped with modern technology, funded by the Rossi Foundation and the Second Chance Foundation. This was the third hospital, after Manhattan and Queens. Sophia stood before the crowd, a microphone in her hand. She was no longer the poor nurse from Brooklyn. She was the director of nursing, but she still wore a white uniform. Still Sophia, the way she had always been. Isabella stood beside her, holding her hand. Marcus Rossi, now 72 years old, sat in a wheelchair in the front row, hair white as snow, eyes shining with tears. "This hospital doesn't carry my name because I'm important," Sophia began, her voice carrying across the plaza. "It carries my mother's name, Catherine Carter, the woman who died because she was afraid to go to a hospital, afraid of medical bills, afraid of becoming a burden to her daughter." Sophia's voice caught for a second. Then she went on. "This hospital exists to remind us of one thing. No one has to die for being poor. No one has to choose between health and putting food on the table. No one has to fear walking into a hospital because they don't have money." She looked out at the crowd. "And it exists because 5 years ago, I stopped on a sidewalk. One choice changed everything." Dominic stepped out of the crowd. He no longer stood in the shadows, no longer hid himself. He walked onto the stage, stood beside Sophia, and took her hand in front of hundreds of people, in front of cameras, in front of the whole world. "No more hiding, no more darkness," Marcus whispered to Isabella, tears rolling down his wrinkled cheeks. "Your mother would be proud." That afternoon, after the opening ceremony, Sophia walked home alone. She wanted to take the old route, the route where it all began. She stopped in front of the alley beside the expensive French restaurant, the place where, 5 years earlier, she had knelt on the cold sidewalk, hands smeared with blood, saving a stranger, and she saw it. Someone had painted a mural on the old brick wall, 2 hands reaching for each other. One hand streaked with blood, one hand wearing a family ring, a crowned lion carved into gold. Beneath it, a rough, scrawled line of words. Kindness was here. November 2024. Sophia touched the wall, her fingers tracing the painted lines. She smiled. Familiar footsteps behind her. Dominic came up beside her and looked at the mural. "Who painted this?" "No idea," Sophia said, "but I like it." Dominic took her hand, his fingers threading through hers. "Let's go home." "Where is home?" "Anywhere you are." They walked away, hand in hand, leaving the alley where it all began. People ask me if I regret it, Sophia thought, her steps light on the familiar sidewalk. The answer was always no, never. I stopped to save a stranger, and I found my family. I found the love of my life. I found my purpose. Sometimes the best things happen when you stop, instead of walking past, when you choose a stranger instead of yourself, when you choose to do the right thing, even when the price could be everything. Because the truth is, when you save one person, you don't only save them, you change an entire current. One choice, one moment, one person who stops. That's how the world changes. Be the one who stops. Sophia Carter's story has come to an end, but the lesson she leaves behind will last. Sometimes we think we're too small to change the world, but the truth is, every act of kindness, every time you stop to help a stranger, every time you choose to do the right thing even when it costs you, creates ripples that travel farther than we ever expect. Sophia was only a poor nurse. She didn't have money. She didn't have power. She didn't have anything. But she had kindness, and that kindness changed an entire system. So what about you? How do you feel about this story? Have you ever faced similar moments in your own life? Have you ever stopped to help someone, even knowing it might bring trouble? Share your story in the comments below. We'd truly love to hear what's in your heart. If this story touched you, please hit the like button, share this video with the people you love, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can listen to more moving stories every day. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video. Wishing everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, and happiness with the people you love. And remember, be the one who stops.